What is going on, nerds? Uh, Happy Memorial Day if you're watching this live right now, or if you are watching it on replay later in the day. But before we get into it, let's just take a minute and remember and thank all the people who made the ultimate sacrifice for this great country. Without them, we wouldn't have a lot of the freedoms and privileges we do now. So, to those who have fallen and those who have previously served or are serving in the active duty, serving the country, we thank you. Now, this live stream was kind of a bet that that I had made with one of our members, Jeremy. And let me see if I can find the thread. Oh, where was it? Hold on one second, guys. And basically, Jeremy was like, hey, can you do a deep dive? So he asked this on May 18th, and I'll share my screen. I'll show you the Twitter conversation. So, by the way, if you're on Twitter and you already subscribe to me on YouTube, go ahead and follow me on Twitter as well. I usually post more stuff there than I'm able to do with new videos. But yeah, here's his tweet. And he said, hey, can we get a deep dive in the Durham Report on May 18th? And then I said, if we get 10 likes on this thread, I'll do it. And to be honest, I was like, dude, who is talking about the Durham Report? Like, it's not top of mind for me. But then that thing got 18 likes, and then the original tweet got 15 likes, and 5 retweets. So, I'm a man of my word. So we're gonna do it. So Jeremy Salmons, you asked for this, and we're gonna go into it. Now, for those of you who don't know what the Durham Report is, you've come to the right place, because what we're gonna do is I'm gonna go through 3 steps. First, I'm gonna go look at how Fox News reported the Durham Report. Then I got a analysis piece from the New York Times. And then we're going to actually open the report itself, the PDF. So we're just going to go directly. And I'll share my screen, and you can read it with me. Obviously, we're not going to read the whole thing because it's hundreds of pages, but we'll look at the exec summary and maybe any particular sections that people find interesting. So buckle up, nerds. And if you think this is going to be interesting, you know what to do. You know you're supposed to hit that like button, right? You know that. And then I think before we get into the PDF, I'm going to do a shout out to the members of the channel who support this content. It's a small group, but you guys are loyal, and I appreciate that. And for those of you who've been watching the channel for a while, and you're thinking, maybe it's time to become a Nerds for Humanity member. I'll get my name shouted out every show, and it starts at $1.99 a month. What's the downside? Okay, so let's start with La Fox. Oh, Fox News, goodness, here we do it. Here we go. I don't go to this site often, but when I do, it's for Nerds for Humanity live streams. So May 19th, let me just see, when was Durham Report finalized? May 15th. So let me see if I can find an earlier article from Fox News. Durham Report. See if Fox News has talked about the Durham Report. Oh, 125,000 times. Jesus, no wonder some people are asking for me to react to it. Seems like it's like a big topic within the Fox News world. So we want to find something that came out around May 15th. Thank you, Fox News website, for having pretty good search. We appreciate that. And we'll say May 15th to May 17th. And then we'll want to find an article that looks pretty pretty detailed. Wow, there's a lot of Fox News articles. I wonder if there are this many articles, and I mean, they are covering it constantly. It looks like every few hours there was something about the Durham Report. I'm not sure which one to pick out, so I'm just going to maybe go to this one. Okay. This is, here we go. Oh no, it's going to autoplay. Don't do that to me, Fox News. Do not autoplay. Stop. Okay. So what does Fox News say? The establishment media is accused of negligence after rushing to dismiss the Durham report that reiterated one of its most beloved talking points, that the Trump campaign coordinated with Russia to influence the 2016 presidential election. Okay, so the first thing that I do want to call out is if you look, yes, that is totally true, Vaughn. The like button should be destroyed. If you look on my previous live streams, I actually did a report, a deep dive into the Republican U.S. Senate study on the influence of Russia on the 2016 election. And they concluded, the Republicans concluded, that Russia clearly had tried to influence the election. I think the nuance here that people are missing, or maybe choosing to ignore, is that it is possible that the Trump campaign did not actively coordinate with Russia, but Russia still did want to influence the election and did want Trump to win. Both those things can be true at the same time. So I think sometimes people do tend to say like, oh, look, there's proof that there was no explicit coordination between Trump and the Russians. Therefore, anything related to Russia is a hoax. But I do think there's a middle ground here, which is no, Russia was acting with bad intentions towards the United States of America, trying to influence our elections in 2016. And that's just a fact. And that Trump did not actively coordinate with them. They just wanted him to win. But let's see what Fox continues to say. Durham's 300-page report indicated the FBI failed to uphold their mission of strict fidelity to the law when it launched the investigation that never found any collusion to begin with. It's quite disturbing, but not really surprising. The establishment was so fully gulled and in the tank for the Russian collusion story. Now, you notice the key word here is collusion. Even Fox News would probably agree that Russian interference is not a hoax or a something that people have been gulled in the tank for. But collusion, active, coordinated collusion with the Trump campaign would have required planning and organization that I think the Trump campaign probably just was not capable of, and there's no evidence that they did. We got some chat action here. Eric Edwards is saying Trump still had meeting at Trump Tower. FBI might have gone overboard, but so did GOP with Benghazi. Comey still cost Clinton election. Yeah, there definitely was gray area activity in terms of Donald Trump Jr.'s meeting and I think Jared Kushner's meeting with people who were offering up dirt on the other campaign that were associated with the Russian intelligence apparatus. But that doesn't mean they actively colluded. They probably took a meeting that they should not have taken. And then as for Clinton, yeah, I definitely think Comey, I think like a few weeks before Election Day, he said, yes, we're reopening the investigation, which really was priceless to kind of turn a lot of independents away from Hillary. Now, in fairness, Hillary was not a great candidate in general. Thank you, Jeremy. Yeah, I got a little bit of, I think it's what you would call it, allergies. But that means the weather's changing and we're getting some flowers and so that's a good thing to have. Okay. Fox News contributor said the media rejecting Durham Report is as predictable as the sun rising in the east. Durham, who has as much credibility as anyone in Washington, concludes the FBI should never have launched that investigation. And the evidence, such as the Steele dossier, was limp to begin with. Of course, all those who insisted the Steele dossier was so credible are the same people now saying Durham's conclusion is a nothing burger. These people have no shame. I always find it interesting when the supporters of Trump claim that the Democrats have no shame. Even if you are a Trump supporter, that guy has no shame. So it's a little pot calling the kettle black, but that's fine. It wasn't. Oh, so listen to this. These people have no shame. Will never hold themselves. Well, this is a Fox News article. Will never hold themselves to the type of high standards we should expect from those in journalism. This is pretty rich, coming from the news organization that had to pay $1 billion to Dominion for defaming them and making up the Stop the Steal story. I mean, you don't pay $1 billion because you were reporting the truth. And they settled that like days before Tucker and Hannity were going to be put on the stand for cross-examination. Anyway, as you can tell, I'm not a huge Fox News or Trump fan. So, Jeremy, you really are torturing me by making me do this live stream. But it is newsworthy, so we should look at it. Let's see. It wasn't lost on observers that many of the people who pushed Russiagate were eager to downplay any investigation. I vehemently disagree with Mr. Durham's characterizations. He betrays a deep misunderstanding of not only New Time, but how we make these decisions. McCabe told Anderson Cooper, "There's nothing new here," insisting that Durham never intended to produce an honest investigation. MSNBC says it was predictable, sad ending, that investigation never have taken place. I'm okay with the investigation, to be honest. Like, as you guys know, I am not a Trump guy. But investigating whether or not a investigation of a political campaign was proper I think is completely okay to ask that question. And it turns out, from what I'm reading in Fox and what I know in other news coverage, that Durham did find that the FBI should not have conducted the investigation using the evidence that they cited. Okay, so basically, it's this whole article is about how the left wing is saying there's nothing to this article. This is like a classic modern polarized media thing where this whole article is about how the left is completely biased and in the tank against Trump. What would have been more credible is if they tried to thread the needle and say the report shows that the FBI should not have investigated Trump, and that it is also true that Russia did try to influence the 2016 election, as in great detail laid out by the Republican-led U.S. Senate Intelligence Committee report on Russian interference in the 2016 election. But this whole article comes across as, wow, look, those crazy lefties refuse to admit this report exists. There was never anything to see here. And it's like, well, there may not have been anything to see here in terms of active coordination and collusion, but there definitely was interference. And so that's the Fox News take. Now let's go to the New York Times take, which I'm guessing will have a different perspective. But let's see. I haven't read this article myself yet. After years of hype, the Durham inquiry failed to deliver. A dysfunctional investigation led by a Trump-era special counsel illustrates a dilemma about prosecutorial independence and accountability in politically sensitive matters. Okay, well, what does Charlie Savage say from Washington? The limping conclusion, a lot of references to limp things from both Fox and New York Times, to Durham's 4-year investigation underscores a recurring dilemma: how to shield sensitive law enforcement from politics. I mean, it's interesting that it was a 4-year investigation. I think it was probably disappointing, to be honest, for both sides. Because I suspect the pro-Durham Report people, when it was happening, were probably hoping that there would be a much bigger bombshell, like they would have uncovered documents showing that the FBI was like, let's totally screw Trump. Let's make sure he doesn't get elected president. And let's just find anything we can about him. And I'm sure the Democrats were hoping to find like solid, even more smoking gun evidence about potential collusion between Trump campaign and the Russians. And neither was happy, because the report sounds like it was like, well, they shouldn't have done the investigation because it was based on weak intelligence. But that's not the same as what I think a lot of maybe pro-Trump people were hoping for, which was, there was like this malicious effort to stop Trump at all costs using the federal government, and Obama ordered, priority treatment of this stuff. So what does New York Times say? At a time when special counsels are proliferating, there have been 4 since 2017. The Russia inquiry ended with a whimper, in contrast to the countless hours of political furor that spun off from it. Yes, with Fox News mentioning the Durham Report 125,000 times, definitely a lot of people were beating the drum on it, that's for sure. Mr. Durham delivered a report that scolded the FBI but failed to live up to expectations of Trump that he would uncover a politically motivated deep state conspiracy. He charged no high-level FBI or intelligence official with a crime, and acknowledged in a footnote that Hillary Clinton's 2016 campaign did nothing prosecutable either. So I think there were some Trump folks, including Donald, who were like, hey, I hope having a special counsel will then allow that investigation to bring charges up against senior leadership in the FBI, or go after the Clinton campaign, which would have been amazing for Trump to kind of really fire up his base. But unfortunately for Trump, Durham didn't really find that. It did accuse FBI of confirmation bias rather than making an explosive conclusion of political bias. Trump treated it as vindication. The Durham Report spells out in great detail the Democrat hoax that was perpetrated upon me and the American people. This is 2020 presidential election fraud, just like stuffing ballot boxes. This is totally a legal act, had a huge impact on the election, and surprise, surprise, therefore, I'm not a loser. I really won if it weren't for these crazy Democrat hoaxes. Let's see. The comparison was striking. Just as his supporters' wild and invented claims of election fraud floundered in court, Fox News agreed to pay $787 million for amplifying lies about Dominion voting systems. It was less that Durham failed to deliver more than William Barr set him up to fail the moment he assigned Durham to find evidence proving Trump's claims. There were real-world flaws with the Russian investigation, especially how the FBI botched applications to wiretap a former Trump campaign advisor. But the Justice Department's Inspector General found those problems, leaving the Justice Department's Inspector General Horowitz already found those problems, so leaving Durham with depleted hunting grounds. So there wasn't a lot of new stuff there. Indeed, credit for Mr. Durham's only courtroom success, a guilty plea by an FBI lawyer who doctored an email, belongs to Mr. Horowitz, who uncovered the misconduct. Now, I don't know, maybe Horowitz thought that he should investigate it more thoroughly because he knew Durham was coming, so maybe we should give Durham some credit for that. And certainly, doctoring an email to get a wiretap renewal, like, screw that, man. That's not cool. So I'm not down with that. Even though I'm a never Trumper, like that's bull. At the same time, Mr. Horowitz kneecapped Mr. Durham's investigation by finding no evidence that the FBI actions were politically motivated. Yeah, so this is, I think, what the Trump sort of MAGA folks were hoping for and what Donald was hoping for. He concluded that the basis of the Russian inquiry and Australian diplomats' tip related to release of Democratic emails hacked by Russia was sufficient to open a full investigation. Okay. So when there was a tip that the Russians had hacked Democratic emails, which I think is true, was sufficient to open an investigation, they made basically a leap here. They made a leap from, the Russians are trying to make Hillary lose, to then, the Russians are working with the Donald. Yeah, was he meeting with some sketchy people in Trump Tower? True, yes, he was. Was Manafort like giving some campaign research to Russian kind of connected people? Yes. But that's not the same as collusion. Collusion, I think, is a pretty strong kind of high bar. So let's see. Final report. Okay. Durham accused the FBI of ignoring mitigating facts, but he did not find evidence of politically motivated misconduct. So let's just highlight the whole thing so you don't accuse me of skipping the important stuff here. That they did ignore mitigating facts but they did not find evidence of politically motivated misconduct. All right. I think that pretty much covers the New York Times summary. They're basically saying not a whole lot there, blah, blah, blah. Okay? So now we're going to go into the actual report. So we're not going to rely entirely on what Fox News or the New York Times tells us, but let's see what Durham himself concluded. From Durham to Merrick Garland, the Attorney General of the United States of America. Looks like there's some procedural stuff. I'm hoping there's an exec summary somewhere because it's 316 pages. Where's the executive summary? Yes, page 7. Okay, let's go there. Go on now. Did that not work? No. All right. We're going to have to get there the old-fashioned way. This is, okay. Since this is going to be a little dry, I'm going to give us some background music. Some Nerds for Humanity. Yes, okay. We'll put it on just lightly. Okay. If you don't like the background music, let me know in the chat. I'll turn it off. All right, let's go to page 7. Here we are. Page 7. Where the hell is the executive summary? Here we go. The public record contains a substantial body of information relating to former President Trump and the Trump Organization's relationship with Russian businesses, Russian business people, Russian officials, as well as separate evidence of Russia's attempts to interfere in the 2016 election. Okay? These and related subjects are well documented in a bunch of places. Our review and investigation focused on separate but related questions, including the following. Okay, what did you focus on? Was there adequate predication for the FBI to open Crossfire Hurricane from its inception in July 2016 as a full counterintelligence and foreign agents Registration Act investigation, given the requirements of guidelines and policies relating to the use of least intrusive investigation tools necessary? So the first question was there adequate predication to open the investigation in the first place? Then, was the opening of, by the way, I find reading the actual report so much more interesting than both the Fox News and the New York Times arguing with each other about it. More nerds should just go to the direct sources. So thank you, Jeremy, for pushing me to do this. Was the opening of Crossfire Hurricane as a full investigation consistent with how the FBI handled intelligence it had received prior to July 31 concerning attempts by foreign interests to influence Clinton and other campaigns? Okay, so question 1, was there enough to open the investigation? Question 2, was what they used to open the investigation consistent with investigations of other campaigns? Did the FBI properly consider highly significant intelligence it received at virtually the same time as that used to predicate Crossfire Hurricane, but which related not to the Trump campaign, but rather to a purported Clinton campaign? Which may have shed light on some Russian information the FBI was receiving from third parties, including the Steele dossier. The Alpha Bank allegations and confidential human source reporting. If not, were any provable federal crimes committed in failing to do so? Okay, so question 1, did they have enough to open it? Question 2, was the level of evidence consistent with other campaigns? Question 3, should they have investigated the Clinton campaign? Question 4, was there evidence that actions violated criminal statutes? And question 5, was there evidence that FBI or department personnel providing false or incomplete information violated to the court violated any statutes? Okay, so those are very reasonable questions. So let's see what the actual report says in real words. Okay. As set forth with Papadopoulos, an unpaid foreign advisor to Trump, the government possessed no verified, here we go. The government possessed no verified intelligence reflecting that Trump or the Trump campaign was involved in a conspiracy or collaborative relationship with officials of the Russian government. Indeed, based on the evidence gathered, including instant investigation, neither U.S. law enforcement nor the intelligence community appears to have possessed any actual evidence of collusion. Okay, that's important. At the commencement of the investigation. So, answer to the first question is that, hey, nothing here that would show collusion, so why would you open the investigation? Then it goes into more detail, but basically the speed and manner in which they opened it, based on raw, unanalyzed, uncorroborated intelligence, reflected a noticeable departure from how it approached prior matters involving foreign interference claims aimed at the Clinton campaign. So they were a little fast on the trigger investigating El Trumpo than they were when they could have investigated Hillary Clinton. Okay. It would have been nice. Let's see if they answer each question. Then, within days after opening Hurricane, FBI opened full investigations on 4 members of the Trump team: Papadopoulos, Page, Manafort, and Michael Flynn. These two, Paul Manafort and Michael Flynn, not surprising that they investigated those two. Given a lot of their dealings and especially Michael Flynn, I think has been convicted of lying about national security stuff. But that doesn't mean that you can open a whole investigation into the campaign, because I think they didn't catch Michael Flynn doing his kind of funny business until after this. No defensive briefing was provided to Trump or anyone in the campaign concerning information received from Australia that suggested there may be some type of collusion. Instead, the FBI began to work on requests for the use of FISA authorities against Page and Papadopoulos. The effort as related to Papadopoulos proved unsuccessful. Similarly, the initial effort directed at Page was unsuccessful until Crossfire investigators obtained what were designated as company intelligence reports generated by Steele. Okay, so they tried to get FISA approval to probably tap Page and Papadopoulos. Couldn't do it. Didn't have enough evidence. But then used the Steele report to justify the investigation. So we determined that the Hurricane investigators did not and could not corroborate any substantive allegations contained in the Steele reporting. Nor was Steele able to produce corroboration, even after being offered $1 million. Further, when interviewed by the FBI in January, Danchenko was also unable to corroborate any substantive allegations in the reports. Rather, Danchenko characterized the information he provided Steele as rumor and speculation and the product of casual conversation. If I had to guess, it sounds to me like the idea of the Russians working with a political campaign. They probably knew, we all know, that the Russians were trying to interfere in the elections generally. But then when they heard just whispers that maybe they're actually actively working with Trump, you could imagine why, if you are, a patriotic person, you're like, my God, we can't have a foreign government work with any political campaign. This is kind of shady. And then given how Trump is just so unconventional and kind of unhinged sometimes, like, you could see why the investigators got ahead of their skis. Shouldn't have done it, though, because the law is the law. And you could argue, wow, investigating a presidential candidate, you could argue the bar should be higher, because you're now going to be seen, as you can see in Trump's Twitter rantings and, Truth Social posts, that it will be then framed as, oh, look, the deep state Obama DOJ was trying to get me. So I'm gonna have to side with a little bit of the MAGA people that, hey, this investigation sounds like should never have started in the first place. Again, doesn't mean the Russians are saints and that they didn't get involved in interfering with our elections, but there was no evidence that they were colluding with Trump to justify these investigations. Then they go into the Steele dossier, where there was a law firm retained by Clinton to do some Oppo research. That's how they got their hands on the Steele report. Crossfire investigators received several of them. These unvetted and unverified Steele reports were used to support probable cause in the FISA applications. Okay. Then you got Igor Danchenko. As noted, U.S.-based Russian national Igor Danchenko, they relied on him to collect information that formed the core allegations and reports. Danchenko himself had told another person that he was responsible for 80% of the intel and 50% of the analysis contained in the Steele dossier. Okay? So in 2016, they identified Danchenko as Steele's primary subsource. Danchenko then agreed to meet with the FBI. Okay. Under the protection of immunity, he and his attorney met with investigators on the 24th, 25th, 26th. And then thereafter from Jan 2017 to October 2020. So he has immunity. And he was unable to provide any corroborating evidence to support the allegations. He described his interactions as rumor and speculation and conversations of a casual nature. So this is basically saying, like, the stuff in the Steele dossier was kind of crappy, and the guy that provided the main material in that Steele dossier, basically with immunity, is like, yeah, I kind of made it up, or I was guessing or speculating, I'm not really sure, that kind of thing. So Jeremy in the chat says the Steele dossier potentially resulting from Russian disinformation is a huge revelation. Oh, yes, possible. I mean, we certainly ran with that Steele dossier, and sounds like the FBI used it to justify the FISA wiretap approval. And now it looks like they later discovered that the source of the dossier was BS. Derek says, in spite of whatever the FBI was doing, it still doesn't make Trump innocent of his crimes. Well, yes. I mean, it also depends on which crimes we're talking about. There are many that Trump is being accused of in general. But I think where it comes down to whether or not there was active, coordinated, intelligent planning and collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia, I think if there were, we would have found out by now. And I think this is more one of those cases where the enemy of your enemy is your friend, where Trump clearly didn't want Clinton to win. The Russians did not want Clinton to win. The Russians wanted to help Trump, but that's not entirely Trump's fault that the Russians wanted to help him. At least there's no evidence of that. Okay, let's see. Significant parts of what Danchenko were inconsistent with what Steele told the FBI. So basically, Steele and Danchenko, that whole report sounds very shaky. Then, the FBI knew in Jan 2017 that Danchenko had been subject of a counterintelligence investigation. Okay. Yeah, Danchenko seems kind of sketch. Meanwhile, Jan 2010, they used a FISA request to use FISA against Danchenko. They never attempted to resolve the prior Danchenko espionage matter before opening him as a paid informant. Moreover, there's no indication that Crossfire Hurricane disclosed the existence of Danchenko's unresolved investigation. So they're basically saying, look, Danchenko had all kinds of questions about him. So if there were questions about Danchenko's kind of reliability, and then you know that he's a main source of the Steele report, you know, how can you hang your hat on the Steele report? Let's see. Jeremy is saying the Kremlin purportedly had been feeding information to Trump's campaign regarding his political rivals. Yes, I guess. Hey, Jeremy, are you saying that's from the Steele report, or are you saying that's from the Durham report? I think you're saying the Durham report is saying that the Kremlin purportedly had been feeding information. You want control? I don't know if I can control F a PDF, but let's see. Let's see. We'll say feeding information. Control F feeding information. Let's try it. Feeding. Okay. Wow, that goes to page 120. In July 2016, requested an urgent meeting at Steele's office in London. On July 5th, handling agent met with Steele in London, and Steele provided him with a report. This report detailed, among other things, salacious information about Donald Trump's alleged sexual activities during his trips to Moscow, and details how the Kremlin purportedly had been feeding information to Trump's campaign regarding his political rivals. Okay. Steele informed Handling Agent 1 that he, Steele, had been hired by Fusion GPS to collect info on Trump, including Trump's relationship with the Kremlin and various business dealings with Russia. Steele told Handling Agent 1 that Fusion GPS had been hired by a law firm, that his ultimate client was senior Democrats supporting Clinton. Handling Agent 1 notes of the meeting reflect that HC was aware of his reporting during an interview with the office. Handling Agent 1 was shown a copy of his notes. Previously noted, Handling Agent 1 did not have any independent recollection of Steele explicitly stating that HC referred to Hillary Clinton. He could think of no other individual. So basically, part of the Steele report was suggesting that the Russians were feeding Manafort and the Trump campaign with Oppo research on Hillary, which all we know from the Republican Senate investigation is that the Trump campaign was feeding information to the Russians with their polling research, which is weird. Like, why would they do that? But that doesn't mean that the Russians were necessarily like colluding in the way that Steele report suggested. Okay. So let's, is there like an overall summary? I guess that was the executive summary that we hit, because we can't do the whole 300 pages. But let's try and wrap it up, because it has been 45 minutes. But basically, here's my summary. the Nerds for Humanity summary, the Tom GPT summary. Number one, you've got the right-wing media really more upset that the left-wing media didn't cover the Durham report and using that as like the great tragedy. But the actual Durham report probably didn't give enough red meat to the Republicans, who were probably hoping for more arrests or more kind of smoking gun, material about how, wow, Obama demanded that they come up with something, or, some senior Democrat officials were just, saying, make up whatever you need to stop this Trump. I don't think it was that bad, but in fairness to the MAGA and to the Trumper, I would say that what the report clearly did say was that the FBI should not have opened the investigation into Trump's campaign team based on flimsy evidence. And, as an American who doesn't love Trump at all, you really do have to, if you really truly support rule of law and the justice system, it has to be applied equally, even to Trump. And so that investigation sounds like should not have happened. On the other hand, I guess on the Democrat side, they would say, look, Trump had been saying that just wait till you see this Durham report. Because I think Trump has said that one of the reasons he lost was that the Durham report wasn't finished on time. I'd be curious to know what you all think in the chat or the comments below. Do you think if the Durham report had been released before the 2020 election that showed that the FBI opened an investigation into Trump based on flimsy evidence, do you think that would have affected the outcome of the election? It might have. I mean, it's certainly better for Trump than the report saying, the investigation was justified. But I also think the Democrats would have used it to say, look, your whole trope that there was this deep state, premeditated, stop Trump at all costs investigation, like that's not true either. Durham didn't find that. Eric says, yes, but Comey screwed over Hillary, so all evens out. Yeah, I think I would agree with you, Eric, that Comey's reopening and then closing, like opening and then closing and then reopening and then closing of his investigations into Hillary's emails was, I mean, every Trump speech talked about that investigation. So I would argue that was even more damaging to and more beneficial to Trump than not having the Durham report come out. But I mean, that's an interesting thing where you think you can see like examples on both sides where the FBI kind of investigated a guy that shouldn't have been investigated. Although, like, when you think about what happened in 2020, the fact that the FBI should not have opened the Hurricane Crossfire investigation, like, didn't really affect Trump that much. There was just behind the scenes kind of wiretapping. Like, no voters, I think, were aware of the Crossfire Hurricane investigation, or it wasn't top of mind for them. But everybody knew, at least in 2016 election, for 2016, everyone knew that Comey was investigating Hillary. Like, he announced it and had a press conference. The FBI did not announce and have a press conference that they were wiretapping Trump. If they had done that, that would have been massively harmful to Trump. But they were kind of silent on Trump, as far as I can recall, from the 2016 election. So I think kind of the FBI screwed over Hillary with all of their press conferences about the email investigation, which then ultimately found that there wasn't anything huge there. I think she definitely should have been way more careful and compliant about how she handled her emails. Um, Same thing with, Kushner and Ivanka. But that's what was much more damaging to and beneficial to Trump. I think the FBI kind of helped Trump for the 2016 election more than they hurt him. Even though the Durham report says what it says, what did the Crossfire Hurricane thing do to Trump in 2016? Like, I don't think the FBI had any press conferences about it, but if they did, let me know. Dylan is saying, I don't think the report being released before 2020 would have changed the final winner. Yeah, I kind of agree. I think Trump just lost, man. Like, people were pissed at him. They were the people who were anti-Trump all came out and voted. The people who were pro-Trump, his 30% base, like, they came out and voted, and then he lost on the independents. And that's simple as that. And I think the independents didn't vote against Trump because they necessarily love Biden. They didn't. I think they voted against Trump because they were just tired of his drama. And I don't think they voted against Trump because of the allegations of the Russia stuff. I think he was, by 2020, like, I think people had accepted that, yeah, the Russians were kind of trying to interfere, but there was no clear evidence of collusion. And so I think I think he just lost. I don't think this report really changed. But I know Trump has said, oh, I got screwed because I didn't really lose because of all these reasons, and one of them was the Durham report was taking so long. Dylan says, remember, Trump's handling of COVID was so bad that the economy is tanked and socially minorities were hurt disproportionately. Biden also campaigned on cash relief supported by 80% of Americans. Yeah, that's true. That is definitely true. I think Trump just lost. I mean, he has not just lost. He didn't just lose in 2020. He also lost in 2018 in the midterms. He's just been losing. I mean, he had the one win in 2016, and ever since then, he's been losing. Now, will he lose again in 2024? I mean, first of all, like, what the hell? Why are we even talking about Trump 2024? Why are we even talking about Trump and Biden in 2024? Seriously? Seriously? Like, literally facepalm. Seriously. Eric says, the first was silent because Obama told them to watch their step. He didn't want the DOJ tarnishing his legacy. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, if anything, maybe Obama told the DOJ to, like, hey, you got to do everything by the book. But clearly they didn't with Crossfire Hurricane. Jeremy says, Russiagate Crossfire Hurricane had huge rippling effects and has done much to shape today's public opinion of Trump and the Ukraine conflict. Interesting. I'm not sure that it influenced the Ukraine conflict. I would imagine the Ukraine conflict has been influenced by the fact that Russia has basically destroyed that whole country. I mean, I know you guys, you've seen the pictures in, like, Bakhmut and other places. Like, I know the Russians and sort of like the pro-Russia kind of sympathizers are like, hey, this is a special military operation. It's not a war. It is merely an effort to defend ethnic Russian minorities and somehow to denazify Zelensky. But I don't think Americans are buying that. I don't think pretty much anyone in the world is buying that. And everybody's seeing a country that's trying to defend itself getting bombed to smithereens and, kind of valiantly trying to defend itself against an aggressor. But I hear your point, Jeremy, that I think you're arguing, no, the fact that there was all this talk about Russia, a collusion with Trump, has basically made people maybe more anti-Russia or quick to condemn Russia. At the same time, like, yes, the Crossfire Hurricane stuff tarnished Trump and probably harmed Russia's brand with Americans. But I would say Putin has not really helped himself by invading neighbors and just bombing the crap out of people. And then also saying, like, clearly things that are not true. Like, this is not a special military investigation to remove Nazis. Like, Zelensky's Jewish, as far as I know. Like, how is he a Nazi? Anyway, let's see. Eric is saying, plus, this is why Trump won. Independent voters didn't like what Hillary was doing in Benghazi, but Trump voters just didn't care and was getting news from Facebook. Yeah, I mean, I think independent voters definitely didn't like Hillary. There were a lot of Democrats who weren't thrilled about Hillary. And Benghazi was a black eye. And I think the Hillary email stuff was kind of sketch. And so, yeah, you could see why in 2016 people are like, hey, let's try something new. But in 2020, I think people were like, enough people were like, I know it's new, but I don't like it, that they voted Trump out. Eric is saying this is why Bernie was popular. Yes, he was. Derek is saying it was Trump's COVID. Yeah, do you think it was COVID that caused Trump his loss, or do you think it's how he handled it? Because I think he really was very erratic, right? Like, he was like, oh, it's not a big deal. And then it is a big deal, which is why I'm going to do warp speed. And then don't wear a mask and have like huge parties inside. Then he got sick himself and had to be like medevaced out. And then he got all this special kind of experimental treatments. And then he said, oh, it's no big deal. I think it was his flip-flopping and kind of like, and then the bleach stuff, and then doing the press conferences, and then stop doing them. I think, yeah, he just didn't handle it that well. You know, could anyone have handled it well, given that it was a novel virus and information was really just dripping in? Like, I think that would have been hard for any president, like even Obama, to do a good job. But they probably would have done a better job than Trump did. Now, I will give credit to Trump on the warp speed stuff. I think that did, I'm sure, accelerate the development. And, you know, kudos to Moderna and Pfizer. I think Pfizer has said that they didn't really need the warp speed stuff. But you got to give credit to Trump on some things. I mean, what I find most odd is, like, why did he get vaccinated in secret? That's just weird. Like, you did all this work on warp speed. You talked about how great it was. And then, you know, when you get vaccinated, you kind of, like, hide it. Like, what's that all about? Dylan says, if it weren't for COVID, I think Trump would have been yeah, he probably would have. He probably would have. Derek is saying a lot of former Trump supporters are waking up and realizing Trump for the con man he is. At some point, it doesn't make sense to go around shouting MAGA when you're poor, broken, unemployed. I mean, I think in defense of the MAGA folks, I think they feel unheard, unrespected, misunderstood by the elites in the Democratic Party and the elites in the Republican Party. And they saw Trump as someone who is just going to blow it all up. But I think at the end of the day, you also need someone that can get stuff done and that can win. And, you know, I feel like Biden, with the infrastructure, getting us out of Afghanistan, the veterans health stuff, the tax cuts for the middle class, the kind of renewable energy stuff. Like, I feel like Biden has probably done more than Trump. Trump had a tax cut for the rich, and he had a lot of drama. He did have a little bit of a love affair with Kim Jong-un and with Xi Jinping. Like, he was definitely, I don't know why Trump is so pro-China. He's pro-Xi Jinping, but then loves to kind of bash on China. He's a complicated dude. I think he's I don't know that he really has a doctrine. I don't know if he really has a kind of framework for how he makes decisions. Dylan says, I think enough Republicans are swayed by Russiagate to help support Trump. Most Americans are only slightly more inclined to be hawkish against Russia. Yeah, could be. Jeremy's saying, yeah, the right is more dovish to Russia and less more hawkish. Okay. I just think in general, if a country is invading another country and the invaded country is trying to defend itself and it doesn't require US boots on the ground, and the invaded country is more of a democracy and more of a stabilizing force, then I think it's okay for the US to provide aid, material aid, if the invaded country is going to fight with their own men and women and put their own lives on the line. If they want to keep fighting and we provide, ammunition for them to defend themselves, like that seems very, very American. And especially on Memorial Day, I think the key thing is like we don't want to put our troops at risk unless there's a clear, present danger to the U.S. security and interests. And in this case, I don't think Russia invading Ukraine rises to the bar of us putting troops on the ground, but providing anti-tank missiles and artillery and things like that the Ukrainians themselves use and are willing to die for. Like, I think that's kind of laudable that the Ukrainians are so resilient. I mean, geez, everybody thought that the Russians would roll over them in 3 days. Vaughn saying, we're so polarized, it's why we still have Biden versus Trump. Yeah. Derek, he dropped the ball and all the Fauci blaming was a turnoff. Yeah, probably. But he blames everybody. I mean, when have you ever seen Trump say, like, I screwed up, I made a mistake? All right, so let's do a thank you. So if you're watching this live or on replay and you find this content useful, there's a few things you can do to help me out as a favor. First is to like this stream, and then in the comments, let me know what you think of this whole Durham report. Do you think it was more a huge kind of vindication of Trump, or was it a, basically a nothing burger, which is what the Democrats would say, or something in the middle? I kind of feel like it was in the middle. Like basically there was no massive conspiracy against Trump, but there was kind of sloppy confirmation bias, I think is what I would call it. So I'd agree with whoever said there was confirmation bias. So you can like, share, comment. That helps the channel a lot. And then you could also become a member. And one of the benefits of becoming a member is you get recognition at the end of most of my live streams, like what we're about to do right now. And let's go through it. So at our highest level, Senior Vice President, Soldier 1. Thank you, Soldier 1. The VP level, we have Kristen Slevin and Bike, long-time members. Kristen's at the 40-month mark. Jeez. Thank you, Kristen. Then at the hardcore level, you have Gene, David, DK, Jackalego, Kirsch, Mr. History, Mona, Vaughn, who's in the stream right now, Yang, Robert, Dean, Galessa, Jay Perrin, AH, Dana, Jason, Daniel, and Mickey. Thank you to StreamYard for helping with the streaming costs. And then at the verified level, you have Lisa, Albert, Brandon, Sophia, Doris, Emerald, Ben, James, Ira, Elizabeth, Shoni, Dr. William, Karen, Zemery, Mai, Brittany, Lori, Juana, Kevin, T, Jeremy, David, Nicholas, Mike, Aurora, Zig, N. Carter, Roberto, and Caleb. And since we're here, if you're wondering who is generating interest on ofthepeople.us, This is, if you don't know what it is, it's basically like an open primary online powered by approval voting. Who's getting interest lately? Trending. Sort by trending and say POTUS 2024. You got Gretchen Whitmer, Andrew Yang, Bernie Sanders, Donald Trump, Robert Kennedy Jr., Chris Sununu, Katie Porter, and Tim Scott as some of the top candidates getting recent approval votes. You're wondering, like, oh, I don't know who Gretchen Whitmer is, or I want to know more about her. You can click on her profile. You can watch a video.
Both my girls are in college now, but I'll never forget those early days. Juggling a newborn, a mom with cancer, a full-time job. It was a lot. All over Michigan, people are facing those same struggles. That's why we've made childcare more affordable, made it a priority to get kids back in class while making the biggest investment.
So you got video, a little more about her background, what she's done in Michigan, her recent tweets. You can also post a question, her recent tweets, and you have a link to her Twitter and her website. And then you can click on this green approve button if you want to approve a voter, and that'll help her rank higher in this list, although she's number one at the moment, for trending, which is like recent approval votes. But we got Donald Trump here as well if you want to approval vote him. I know there's some Trump supporters that are probably watching this live stream. We got you covered. You can watch a video interview with him on Fox News, a little description, see what recent tweets. He hasn't been using Twitter a lot, so that feature may not be that useful. But you can approval vote him by clicking this green button. And we'll be making some other improvements to OTP of the people soon. And I do want to thank some of our supporters and volunteers. So here are active Patreon supporters of the people. Think of it as a Yelp for political candidates powered by approval voting. So thank you to our Patreon supporters listed here. Eric, Elizabeth, Tony, Aaron, Rob, John, Timothy, Jessica, Trickle Up, Travis, Muhan, and Dylan. And then to our volunteer product development team, myself, Ian, Shay, Aaron, and James. So go check out ofthepeople.us. Upvote whoever you want. We'll be adding some new features, including easier voting from within the feed and maybe even a ability to boost a candidate. If you've already approval voted them, but you want to show extra enthusiasm, we are thinking of features like that and then some other cool stuff as well. But with that, hope you all enjoy your Memorial Day, and thank you again to all who are serving now, who have served in the past, and of course, especially to people who made the ultimate sacrifice or were injured or handicapped as a result of their service. We all have a lot to be thankful for, and we thank you for giving us all the freedoms and protecting the principles and values that we all enjoy as Americans here. So with that, we'll see you later. Goodbye, nerds.